Hello everyone, I'm Ulysses. Today I'm here with Dr. Sonia Vohito, who served as a legal policy specialist with End Corporal Punishment Initiative, hosted by the World Health Organization. And in this role, she concentrates on law reform efforts aimed at ending corporal punishment of children globally. She also holds a PhD in comparative constitutional law from the University of Pretoria's Institute for International and Comparative Law in Africa. Very nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. So you worked as 11 years with the Global Initiative to End All Corporal Punishment for Children as the Africa Project Coordinator. So what first inspired you to focus your research and advocacy on ending corporal punishment of children in Africa specifically?
Thank you again. In fact, the Global Initiative was founded in 2001, and the main remit of the Global Initiative was to work across the world. There was no specific campaign. But the Africa Project started in 2009. That was the first regional project of the Global Initiative. So we started in Africa because we noticed that there were already child rights campaigns, child protection campaigns, but focusing on other issues like child marriage, child labor. So we thought we could use the existing momentum and focus it on ending corporal punishment of children. So that's how we started. And when we started, only one African country had prohibited corporal punishment in all settings. So when we're talking about all settings, we're talking about schools, daycare, alternative care settings, but the home as well. So only one country in West Africa.
That's amazing. So it started a long time ago, actually.
Yes, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I believe in 2011, you actually gave a talk at the Global Summit on ending corporal punishment in Dallas. And do you want to talk a little bit about what you presented, if you still remember?
Ooh, that was a long time ago, I must say. Yes. But yeah, I'll try. I'll try and remember and discuss it. In 2011, then we had 3 African countries that had prohibited corporal punishment in all settings, including in the home. And so the idea for me, when I was in Dallas, it was to talk about the experience of those 3 prohibiting countries. So it was just to say how they got to achieve prohibition in all settings, the law reforms, who was involved in the campaign to achieve full prohibition of corporal punishment. So I talked about the child rights activists, the teachers, the parents, the students, because, when it comes to ending corporal punishment in schools and also children, we heard
Yeah.
about children as well. So that's what I talked about.
I see. And I believe you also wrote a paper called The African Children's Charter and Ending Corporal Punishment of Children in Africa. And in your paper, you describe corporal punishment as actually the most common form of violence against children in Africa. So, why do you think this practice remains so deeply rooted culturally and legally?
In this article, I must say, I talked about, I mentioned that corporal punishment is the most common form of violence against children in Africa, but in fact, it is the most common form of violence globally.
Globally, yeah.
Yes, it is actually deeply rooted. This is because uh, children, actually, we as parents, I must say, as parents, what we found out is that as parents, because we inflict corporal punishment upon children, because we were subjected to corporal punishment by our own parents. So we think that questioning corporal punishment is questioning our parents' attitude toward ourselves. So it's difficult. It's deeply rooted. If it has happened in the past, it's difficult for us to think about changing it. And then we often hear parents saying, I am here, I am doing so well, I'm so successful in my life. It's because I was subjected to corporal punishment. So our work is to try and deconstruct that thinking that corporal punishment is the best way to raise children.
I see. And how much of an impact does corporal punishment have on children in African culture in African countries?
In fact, the impact that we see, and then we would see the impact in the negative impact of corporal punishment in Africa, but in other parts of the world as well. But what we saw based on the research findings in Africa in particular, we see that corporal punishment has negative effect on the physical health of children. So it could result in severe damage, long-term disability, and even death. Yeah, there's also a severe damaging result on mental health of children as well. You can see that negative effect of mental health, so it can lead to depression, behavioral disorders, and also, aggression into children with aggression. And in terms of the school setting, you can see that children can drop out of school because of corporal punishment.
Wow.
Um, and low performance as well.
Yeah. So that's a lot of negative impacts on children.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know some countries still use very vague terms like reasonable chastisement in their laws. And so, how does that kind of language affect the enforcement of child protection laws?
It's an issue actually. Reasonable, we have the terms of reasonable chastisement, justifiable punishment. We found that these sort of terms actually allow a certain degree of violence, and this is very dangerous because it leads to the trying to understand what is reasonable, what is justifiable violence. And then we sometimes the judges find themselves trying to establish how much is reasonable and not
Yeah.
reasonable, and then how much children should suffer, what kind of suffering should children go through so that it is accepted that the violence is not reasonable. So what we're trying to achieve by the law reform is just to prohibit corporal
Mm.
punishment, any form of violence, however light.
Yeah. Do you think people use like these terms as like a loophole to kind of get away around these laws of corporal punishment?
Of course, because sometimes when children are subjected to corporal punishment, parents or teachers or any adults, they will come and then they will try to argue
Yeah.
that the punishment inflicted was actually reasonable, was justifiable. And if you have this sort of terms in the law, of course, they will say they were within their rights when they use that reasonable punishment. This is why we have to make sure that we repeal these sort of terms, reasonable or justifiable. There is no justifiable violence. There's no justifiable violence for adults, so there can't be justifiable violence for children.
I see. And you mentioned that as of 2021, only 10 African countries had prohibited corporal punishment. Now the number has risen to 12. In your view, what are the main legal barriers preventing more countries from following to end all corporal punishment?
In most cases, what we found is about political will. You would have cases where maybe governments or parliament thinks that ending corporal punishment, prohibiting corporal punishment is not a priority. So it's about priority. We have to make sure that ending corporal punishment is higher on the agenda. In some cases, what we found is that we have a law, we have a bill, actually, a draft law, and then we have a prohibition of corporal punishment included in the bill. But the law is not passed because there's a change of administration and then a change of priorities. That's also a challenge to achieving prohibition. And then there are also cases of, like in the US, the federal system. If you are in the federal system, it's sometimes very difficult to have a federal legislation prohibiting corporal punishment in all the countries. So you will have prohibition state by state. So that's also a challenge.
And do you
And
think,
then,
oh yeah,
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask,
And
do you
yes,
think Agenda 2040's aspiration of ending all corporal punishment in Africa is still achievable given the current progress?
in fact, you may know that we also have the UN 2030
Yeah.
agenda for sustainable development. So, and target 16.2 of the
Oh,
SDG
yeah.
also requires states to prohibit, to end all forms of violence by
Yeah.
2030. So African states are actually bound by the Agenda 2030 and the Agenda 2040, and then it's difficult. Obviously, signs that we have 55 African countries. So far, only 12 have achieved prohibition in all settings. So there's still a long way to go, but we can see the momentum. So it may not happen in 2030, but who knows? If we push, if we work harder, maybe we'll have a bit more states prohibiting by 2040.
Yeah. Reading your paper, I couldn't help but think how corporal punishment isn't just in Africa, but it's all around the world. For example, it's legal in public schools right here in Texas, and that really made me think deeply how embedded these practices are. Even in like the U.S., we talk a lot about rights and freedom. So I'm curious, what do you think it will take to shift not only the laws but also the mindset to keep corporal punishment socially acceptable?
It is true that enacting laws is not enough. We can have laws, but if they're not implemented, if we do not take implementing measures, if we do not put resource, mobilize resource, then we were not going to change attitude. So really, public education is important. And then we need to support parents as well. So you may have, if we're talking about ending corporal punishment in the home, then we need maybe parenting intervention, family support, so that we can promote positive parenting. And if we're talking about the school setting, we also have to train our teachers, also to get them, maybe to train them in terms of class management, positive discipline in the classroom. So that's really important. And there are good models in the US. I don't know if you heard about the no hit zone. So that's really important. Those are key initiatives and intervention which promote positive parenting and positive and non-violent practice. So this is what we need actually, not only the law.
Mhm. And finally, if you could speak directly to the next generation of, of leaders, young people who care about this justice and want to make a difference, what would you say to them about protecting children's rights and challenging these very harmful norms like corporal punishment?
What I would say to the youth, to young people, to children, to students, is that when it is safe to do so, they should express themselves. They should speak truth to power,
Yeah.
because we believe in child participation, child involvement, youth involvement. So they should share their concern and share their experience. This is how actually we will hear their voice and act upon it.
Mm. Those are very, very powerful words. And I would like to say thank you again for joining on my podcast. And thank you so much for this time and opportunity.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.